Hey, does your saddle seem to fit perfect in October and terrible in March without you changing a thing? Maybe it feels tipped down in front, wobbly, or your girth just no longer fits. Most riders start second guessing everything. The frustration is real. You can't just put the same saddle back on your horse. And this phenomenon varies depending on where you live and how much downtime you have due to frigid weather or poor footing, where we experience a lot of seasonal changes. But if you've started having issues because the same saddle rides differently with every season, this video is going to tell you the why. And then I'm doing a little ebook that's going to be very affordable, and it's just too much for a video that will lay out all the steps you can take for the different scenarios and help you through this. So don't rush out and buy a new saddle right now. That might actually make the problem worse. And if your saddle basically fits to begin with, it's about management, and we have to start with the biology, not the equipment. So research shows that horses naturally cycle through a winter contraction and a summer expansion. This isn't about weight alone. It's about how the top line responds to temperature, daylight, and workload. This change happens faster than most riders realize because we see our horses every day and it sneaks up on us. I'm calling it the March surprise. However, if you know how to recognize the first subtle indicators, you can intervene early and manage the transition and avoid creating problems where there weren't any, because it's a cyclical thing. Two things happen in the winter. First, your horse burns calories just to stay warm. Heat production pulls energy not only from the fat stores, but also from the muscle reserves. So when the workload drops at the same time, the muscles that stabilize the back begin to soften and shrink. Second, we see the hay belly illusion. Because we feed high fiber hay in the winter, your horse develops a distended belly from gut fill, it's called. He looks round, but if you look at his spine, he's actually narrowed. So, hay belly does not necessarily mean your horse got fat. So, it's like your girth groove moved forward, dragging the saddle onto the shoulders, while the wither area has lost its nice plump padding. It's a cyclical nightmare. You got a wide belly and a narrow back. But the science of it is, it's not just about the volume that you're seeing diminish. It's called turgidity, or it's the internal pressure or fullness of the muscle. So when a horse loses this turgidity, their muscle hasn't necessarily disappeared yet. It's just lost its plump firmness. So it acts like a squishy sponge instead of a firm shelf. So if you palpate this like in the fall at the end of the season, and then again in spring, like now-ish or before you resume work, you'll definitely feel it. If you think of the muscle like behind the shoulder, the longissimus, as a shelf, and in the summer that shelf is like hard rubber. It holds your saddle up. But and here, this is research shows that after just 4 to 6 weeks of reduced work, that muscle loses its internal pressure, and the hard rubber feeling goes to a soft sponge, and it's gone. So this causes what's it's just like a drop. It's just everything is vertically dropped. Your horse might measure the same with a weight tape, and we're going to be talking about that later. But weight tapes and tracings. But because the muscle is soft, it can't support the weight. So it's not the same. So even if you do weight tape your horses and you don't see a difference, you probably will when you go to girth up, but your horse just can't support the weight. So just be careful. We're all weekend warriors, or we get a nice warm 50-degree January day. We just have to keep in mind that the horses aren't quite able to hold up the saddle and us and everything the way they normally could, the saddle sinks down, it can drop onto the withers real quickly. So I got a video about checking the space as you ride, and that's a really good tip all the time, but especially as you're getting going in the spring. Um, so their suspension system just isn't there, and it can fail. So that could be really painful. And this is where some people get into trouble. It's just not, it happens, but it happens to all of us. You see your horse every day and you don't realize it's happening until it's too late sometimes. So don't beat yourself up over it. It just is the way it is. And if you think that you're just going to get to riding them to get the muscle back, that's, if the saddle has dropped, especially closer to the withers and the spine in general, every step you take is compressing the blood flow to that tissue. The horse is going to feel this. It's going to feel like a pinch. He's going to invert his back to escape the pain. And when he inverts, he disengages his core. And then we get that other cycle going, and we can get an atrophy cycle going. So now you're riding a hollow horse in a pinching saddle. You're not building muscle, and you're training the atrophy. So I'm showing the death spiral here, which is a little dramatic, but the atrophy cycle. Um, the saddle doesn't fit because the muscle is gone, and the muscle can't come back because the saddle doesn't fit. So it is kind of a death spiral. But how do you break the cycle? You need permission to wait. You don't need a new saddle for a temporary problem. You need a bridge. You need to know exactly when it's safe to ride and how to support that soft muscle until it turns back into hard muscle. So a lot of people they'll go get a different saddle, or they'll do something really drastic. And really what you need to do is just get your horse built back up and be patient. You have to wait. Give yourself permission to wait and work on your horse. Do some groundwork. I've got some ideas. I've developed a framework. I don't know. I call this the monitor, mitigate, and intervene. It's just, the decision tree that helps you determine if this is just normal winter change, or if you need to use specific shims to lift the saddle off the withers, which is, you can't forget about the lower back, because that goes away too. So don't just lift the withers, but we'll get into that more. So what I've shared today is really just like triage, emergency. In my upcoming seasonal dynamics guide, I go much deeper. I'm going to make this available really soon, but I just wanted to get some information out there. But it's going to teach how, to distinguish the difference between the normal seasonal variants, which we can just monitor, and the actionable discrepancies, which require intervention. We'll look at the girth groove variants that I talked about a little bit, and why you might be going up a hole on your billets even though your horse looks rounder. That's a red flag that the barrel is distended, like we talked about, but the top line, the actual suspension system, has collapsed. We need to go deeper into the anatomy of atrophy. We'll learn how muscle loss starts specifically in the trapezius pockets behind the shoulder. And that's where you get your wither hollows, and that destabilizes the saddle. So there's a lot of things we can do. We'll analyze why the wool panels can often adapt to this, while foam panels, you're going to have a little harder time. So if you're in a climate where you get this thing called winter contraction, if you have a wool flock saddle, you're going to be ahead of the game a bit. The guide also covers a seasonal saddle checklist, and it shows you how to use wither tracings to create a baseline, because you can't measure and manage what you don't. Sorry, you can't manage what you don't measure. That's what I meant to say. But you can start that process. Today is a really good time. And if you have baseline, fine. If you don't, you're going to have a baseline for going forward, which is really cool. So this is a perfect time to start that. So I put a little like decision tree at the end here. You're welcome to go to my website. I'll make a free version if you want to click. It's got a little more to it. If you want to go get it, it's kind of handy, and I'll link that below. So let's get back to riding. Don't worry, it's all it's all manageable. Just got to monitor it. All right. Thanks for listening.